The chamber stretched wide enough to hold 1,000 beings, and today it held exactly that. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the center, surrounded by creatures of every imaginable shape. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed oxygen, others required methane tanks. But they all had one thing in common. They all wanted humanity enslaved. Chen's hands trembled as she gripped the podium. She had spent 3 days arguing Earth's case. 3 days explaining that humans were peaceful, that they only wanted to trade and learn. 3 days wasted. The vote is called, announced Speaker Voth, a towering creature with 6 legs and crystalline skin. All in favor of Resolution 7793, the placement of species human under controlled labor status. Lights filled the chamber. Green lights. Every single one. 847 species voted yes. Not a single red light of opposition appeared. Chen felt her stomach drop. Behind her, the 2 human guards from Earth's tiny fleet stood frozen in shock. This could not be happening. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 20 years ago. They had been so excited to meet other intelligent life. They had shared their culture, their music, their stories, and now this. Ambassador Chen. Voth's voice echoed through her translator. Earth has 30 days to comply. Failure to do so will result in military intervention. Why? Chen's voice cracked. What have we done? A delegate from the Krethak Empire stood. The reptilian creature's 4 eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. You advanced too quickly, human. In 20 years, you have spread to 12 worlds. You have reverse-engineered our medical technology. You have begun building ships that rival our own. You are dangerous. We are learners, Chen shouted.
We adapt.
That is not a crime. It is a threat, said a Zin representative, its tentacles waving. Better to control you now than fight you later. Your species excels at war. Your history shows this. We will not make the mistake of letting you grow stronger. So you will chain us?
Chen felt tears on her face.
You will enslave an entire species because you fear what we might become? We prefer the term controlled labor status, Voth said calmly. You will be treated well, fed, housed, given meaningful work. Many species before you have thrived under such arrangements. Many species before us, Chen whispered. How many others have you enslaved? No one answered. Chen looked around the chamber at faces both familiar and strange. She had shared meals with some of these beings. She had thought them friends. The avian delegate from Kepler 442b would not meet her eyes. The silicon-based life form from Proxima had been teaching her their language. Now they all looked away. We will not comply, Chen said quietly. Then you will be made to comply, Voth replied. This session is concluded. The transmission cut out. Chen stood alone in the human embassy, knowing that everything had just changed. She reached for her communicator to warn Earth, but the line was dead. They had already cut Earth's communications. On Mars, Sergeant Marcus Webb watched the red dust swirl outside the colony dome. His squad was playing cards in the rec room when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the control center and saw them on the screens. Ships, hundreds of them. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel like a swarm of locusts. All personnel to defensive positions, the commander's voice crackled. This is not a drill. Marcus grabbed his rifle and ran. The Mars colony had 50 soldiers and 300 civilians. They had weapons meant for pirates and raiders, not an invasion fleet. As he reached the outer wall, the first ship landed. Its door opened and creatures in armor poured out. The fight lasted 17 minutes. Marcus woke up in chains. Around him, other humans sat in a cargo hold. Some were crying, others stared at nothing. A little girl clutched her mother's hand. Marcus recognized her from the colony school. Where are they taking us? Someone asked. No one answered because no one knew. On Europa, the ice mining station fell without a fight. On Titan, the research facility was overrun in minutes. On Earth's orbital stations, people were rounded up and loaded onto alien ships. Humanity's small fleet tried to fight back. 20 human warships against thousands. They destroyed 3 alien vessels before being obliterated. Earth itself prepared for invasion, but the aliens did not land. They simply surrounded the planet with a blockade. Nothing in, nothing out. A message appeared on every screen across Earth. You have 48 hours to surrender leadership for processing. If you resist, we will begin orbital bombardment of your cities. Comply and only those assigned to labor quotas will be taken. In an underground bunker in Shanghai, Sarah Kim stared at the message. She was an engineer, barely 23 years old. She had been working on Earth's newest ship design when the blockade began. Now she watched as world leaders appeared on television, their faces pale with fear. They had no choice. Earth had billions of people and weapons that could not reach the ships in orbit. To fight would mean extinction. The surrender came 36 hours later. Sarah watched the shuttles descend. They took people by the thousands. Mostly young adults. Strong workers. Intelligent minds. They scanned everyone and selected based on criteria no one explained. Families were torn apart. Children screamed for parents. Parents fought and were beaten down. Sarah's number came up on the third day. She stood in a line of 2,000 others waiting to board a shuttle. An old man next to her was crying silently. "They are making a mistake," he whispered. "Humans do not forget. We do not forgive." A guard, some insect-like creature with a translator, smacked him with a shock stick. The old man fell. Sarah helped him up. The guard moved on. As she supported the old man toward the shuttle, he gripped her arm. "Remember," he said, "whatever happens, remember everything. Learn everything. Humans are survivors. This is not the end." Sarah nodded. She did not feel like a survivor. She felt like cargo. The shuttle took off, packed with humans standing shoulder to shoulder. Through a small window, Sarah watched Earth grow smaller. The blue planet that had been humanity's home for millions of years, now a prison surrounded by alien ships. The journey took 3 weeks. They were transferred to larger ships, fed protein paste that tasted like plastic, given water that smelled wrong, kept in cages barely tall enough to stand in. Sarah met others during the journey. Marcus was there, the soldier from Mars. He had a scar across his face from the battle. Chen arrived later, the ambassador, who looked like she had aged 10 years. They did not speak much. What was there to say? When they finally arrived at their destination, a massive station orbiting a gas giant, they were sorted. Chen was bought by a council member as a house servant. Marcus was sent to a fighting arena. Sarah was assigned to a shipyard. As they were led away in different directions, Marcus caught Sarah's eye. He mouthed 2 words. "Stay alive." Sarah nodded. She would stay alive. They all would, because the old man was right. Humans did not forget. Across the galaxy, millions of humans were scattered to hundreds of worlds. They worked the mines, built the ships, fought in the arenas, served in the houses of their masters. The aliens believed they had solved the human problem. They had no idea what they had started. On Earth, behind the blockade, 9 billion humans remained, and they began to plan. 20 years passed like a slow death. Marcus Webb no longer thought of himself as a sergeant. He was Gladiator 7 in the Krethak fighting pits. Every week he fought for the entertainment of creatures who bet on which human would survive. Sometimes he fought aliens. Sometimes he fought other humans. He hated those days most. The scar on his face had company now. Burns from energy weapons. Claw marks from a Vexian warrior. A badly healed broken arm that ached when it rained. Not that it rained in the arena, but his body remembered Earth weather even when his mind tried to forget. Gladiator 7, prepare for combat. The announcement came in a dozen languages. Marcus stood and picked up his weapons, a plasma blade and a neural whip. Alien weapons for alien entertainment. He walked into the arena where 50,000 beings cheered and screamed. None of them were human. His opponent entered from the other side. Another human. A woman younger than him with haunted eyes. She looked at Marcus and shook her head slightly. She knew, they both knew. Only one would leave alive. The fight began. Marcus moved fast, faster than the crowd expected. He had learned to read his opponents in 20 years. The woman was quick but inexperienced. A newer slave probably. She tried to circle him, looking for an opening. Marcus gave her one deliberately. She took it. He let her blade get close, then twisted. His elbow struck her temple. She dropped, unconscious but alive. The crowd booed. They wanted blood. They wanted death. "Finish her," someone screamed. Marcus stood over the unconscious woman and raised his blade. Then he turned to the Krethak overseer's box and shook his head. The crowd went silent. No gladiator had ever refused before. "Gladiator 7, you will comply or be executed," the overseer's voice boomed. Marcus dropped his weapon. "Then execute me." The overseer stared down at him. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the overseer laughed. "Take them both to the pens. Humans are amusing when they pretend to have dignity. Marcus was beaten for his defiance but not killed. He was too valuable. As they dragged him past other cells, he saw humans watching. In their eyes, he saw something that had not been there before. Hope. That night, a whisper reached his cell, passed from human to human through the underground network that had slowly grown over 20 years. 3 numbers, a date, coordinates. The fire rises, someone whispered in the dark. Chen Wei had learned to be invisible. For 20 years, she had served council member Voth in his estate. She cleaned. She served food. She stood in corners during important meetings and pretended to not understand what was being said. But she understood everything. The aliens believed humans were broken. They saw servants who obeyed, workers who followed orders, slaves who accepted their fate. They did not see the intelligence in quiet eyes. They did not notice when a servant's hands lingered over a computer terminal just long enough to memorize codes. They did not realize that humans were mapping every detail of their masters' worlds. Chen had learned 17 alien languages. She knew the defense codes for 6 major council worlds. She understood the political structure of the galaxy better than most council members, and she had been sending this information home through channels so secret that even most humans did not know they existed. On this particular day, Voth was hosting a gathering of high-ranking officials. Chen moved through the room with a tray of drinks as invisible as furniture. "The human investment has paid off remarkably well," said a Zin admiral. "Our mining output has increased by 40%. Our shipyards run day and night," added a Krethak general. "Human workers require minimal maintenance and produce excellent results." "They have stopped resisting," Voth said, taking a drink from Chen's tray without looking at her. "The first generation remembered freedom. This new generation knows only service. In another 20 years, they will have forgotten Earth entirely." Chen kept her face blank as she moved away. They had no idea. The children born into slavery were not broken. They burned with a cold rage that made their parents' anger look like a candle next to a star. Those children were being raised on stories of Earth, of freedom, of a day that would come. That night, Chen accessed Voth's personal computer. She had his passwords. She had been collecting them for years, one character at a time. She downloaded fleet positions, military strength data, and communications protocols. Then she uploaded it all to a hidden satellite network that would relay it to Earth. Before she logged out, she typed 4 words into a secure channel. "The time is near." Sarah Kim stood in the massive shipyard that orbited a dwarf star. For 20 years, she had built ships for the Zin Collective. Massive cargo vessels, sleek fighters, even pleasure cruises for wealthy aliens. She had learned more about alien engineering in 2 decades than most species learned in centuries, and she had been stealing every bit of it. The aliens thought humans were simple laborers. They gave them tasks and expected obedience. They did not realize that humans saw patterns, made connections, improved designs even while building them. Every ship Sarah touched, she made slightly better than the plans specified, and she remembered every modification. Around her, 300 other humans worked. They did not speak much during shifts. Cameras watched them. Overseers monitored their output. But at night, in the cramped quarters where they slept, they talked. "Did you hear?" whispered Thomas, a young man born in the shipyard. He had never seen Earth except in pictures. The Sol beacon went dark. Sarah's heart jumped. The Sol beacon was the only signal Earth sent out. A simple ping saying the blockade was still active. For 20 years, it had pulsed steadily. Now it was silent. "What does it mean?" asked another worker. Sarah knew what it meant. She had been waiting for this signal. They all had been waiting. She pulled out a small chip hidden in her boot. On it were the complete schematics of every ship type the Zin used. Weapons systems, engine designs, shield frequencies, everything. She had 6 others just like it hidden throughout the facility, and she was not the only human collecting intelligence. "It means," Sarah said quietly, "that someone on Earth finally turned off the light, maybe because they do not need it anymore." The workers looked at each other. No one spoke, but understanding passed between them. Around the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. In mines on asteroid belts, in factories on industrial worlds, in the homes of aliens who thought their human servants were deaf and dumb. Millions of humans scattered across hundreds of worlds receiving the same signal. The Sol beacon was dark. Earth was silent. The aliens noticed but did not care. A human work crew disappeared from a mining colony in the outer reach. Investigation teams found the colony empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just gone. Probably a transport malfunction, the report said. Humans are fragile. Space exposure would leave no remains. Another colony went silent 3 days later. Then a research station. Then an entire asteroid mining operation with 2,000 human workers. The Galactic Council reviewed the reports with mild concern. They sent investigation fleets to the affected areas. Those fleets reported finding nothing. Just empty facilities and silence. What the investigation fleets did not report, because they never returned to report it, was what they found in the darkness between stars. Ships that should not exist. Human ships, sleek and black and silent. Ships that did not answer hails or show up on scanners until it was too late. The investigation fleets simply vanished. The Council assumed they had been lost to navigation errors or equipment failure. Such things happened occasionally in deep space. They did not realize they were being hunted. In his cell, Marcus received another whisper. A number this time. A countdown. 30 days. In Voth's estate, Chen smiled as she served dinner to aliens discussing increased human productivity. They did not notice her expression. In the shipyard, Sarah looked at the massive vessel she was building and made one final modification to its engine core. A small change, barely noticeable, but when activated, it would overload every system on the ship. Around the galaxy, millions of humans went about their work, obedient, quiet, waiting. The aliens did not notice the change. Why would they? Humans had been slaves for 20 years, broken, tamed, useful. They did not see the fire building beneath calm surfaces. They did not feel the rage that had been carefully nurtured and controlled for 2 decades. They did not understand that humans were not broken. Humans were ready, and Earth's silence was not the silence of death. It was the silence of something massive taking a breath before the roar. The mining colony on Kepler 186f stopped transmitting on a Tuesday morning. The Zin Collective sent an automated check and received nothing but static. They logged it as a communications failure and scheduled a repair crew for the following week. By the time the repair crew arrived, 3 more colonies had gone dark. The repair ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel expecting to find a simple transmitter malfunction. Instead, they found ruins. The mining equipment was destroyed. The habitation domes were empty. 2,000 workers had simply vanished. No bodies, no blood, just scorch marks and silence. This was an attack. The repair crew captain reported back to headquarters. Unknown hostiles. We need military support. The Zin sent a battleship. The battleship arrived 2 days later and found the repair crew's ship drifting in space. Life support was off. The crew was dead, frozen, and carved into the hull in human letters were 3 words, "We are coming." The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Reports flooded in from dozens of systems. Colonies going silent. Investigation teams disappearing. Strange ships spotted on long-range sensors that vanished before identification. Pirates, suggested a council member. What pirates could strike so many locations simultaneously? Replied another. Speaker Voth reviewed the reports with growing unease. A pattern was emerging. Every attacked site had one thing in common. They all had significant human labor populations, and after each attack those humans were gone. Send the 3rd Fleet to patrol the outer reach, Voth ordered. Find these attackers and destroy them. The 3rd Fleet was composed of 40 warships from 6 different species. They represented the combined military might of some of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. They jumped to the outer reach with enough firepower to level a dozen worlds. They never reported back. 3 weeks later, their wreckage was found scattered across half a light year. The ships had been torn apart by weapons that left strange energy signatures. Weapons that did not match any known technology in the galactic database. On the Krethak homeworld, General Thax studied the recovered data from the 3rd Fleet's last moments. The recordings showed ships appearing from nowhere, black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible speed and fired weapons that bypassed shields entirely. What are we facing? Thax asked his analysts. Unknown, General. The technology is beyond our classification systems. The ships are using power sources we cannot identify, and their tactics suggest military training far beyond what any known species possesses. Thax played the final moments of the fleet's flagship. Through the chaos of the battle, One image appeared on screen for just a moment. A ship's hull, and on it, painted in white, was a symbol. A blue circle with green continents. Earth. That is impossible, Thax said. Earth has been blockaded for 20 years. They have no fleet, no resources. They are contained. Perhaps we should verify the blockade status, suggested an analyst. Thax sent a message to the blockade fleet. 20 ships surrounded Earth, preventing any ships from leaving or entering. The fleet commander should have responded within seconds. The response never came. Thax sent another message. And another. Finally, he ordered a military probe sent to the Sol system. The probe would take a week to arrive, but it would give them visual confirmation. By the time the probe arrived, 12 more colonies had gone silent. The attacks were increasing in frequency and scale. Entire systems were being hit simultaneously. The Council scrambled to respond, but they were fighting shadows. The enemy appeared, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The probe reached the Sol system and began transmitting data. Thax watched the feed with his command staff. They expected to see Earth surrounded by the blockade fleet. Instead, they saw something else entirely. The blockade ships were there. All 20 of them, floating dead in space, torn apart from the inside out, and around Earth like a protective swarm were ships, thousands of ships, black vessels that the probe sensors could barely detect. How? Someone whispered. Thax understood then. While the galaxy had been content to use human labor, Earth had been working. 20 years of every remaining human on that planet dedicated to one goal: revenge. They had built a fleet underground in hidden facilities, using resources the blockade had not detected. They had developed technology in secret, advancing beyond anything the galaxy had seen. "Get me the Council," Thax ordered. Now. But the transmission was interrupted. The probe's feed showed something new. The black ships around Earth were moving. Not toward the probe, but away, jumping to faster than light speed. Thousands of them heading in every direction. "Track them," Thax ordered. His staff tried. The ships scattered to hundreds of destinations. And as the tracking data came in, Thax felt his blood run cold. The ships were heading to every major world in the galaxy. Military centers. Council headquarters. Industrial hubs. Earth was not just fighting back. Earth was going to war. Marcus received his activation code during a fight in the arena. It came through a transmission hidden in the arena's speaker system, a series of numbers that meant nothing to the aliens but everything to him. When his opponent charged, Marcus sidestepped and struck with precision. The alien went down hard. As the crowd roared, Marcus looked up at the Overseer's box and smiled. The Overseer noticed and frowned. Gladiators did not smile. That night, Marcus was not alone in his cell. 3 other humans from the fighting pits crouched with him in the darkness. "The ships are here," one whispered. "Outside the station, waiting." "How many of us are ready?" Marcus asked. "All of us. 300 fighters. 600 workers in the station's lower levels. 2,000 more in the city below." Marcus nodded. "Then we move at dawn. The Overseers will not expect it. They think we are broken. What about the civilians? The families? Extraction teams are standing by. Earth sent enough ships to take everyone. No one gets left behind." As dawn broke over the Krethak station, the alarms began to scream. Marcus and his fellow gladiators overwhelmed their guards with bare hands and stolen weapons. In the lower levels, human workers seized control of power systems and life support. In the city, sleeper cells that had waited 20 years for this moment struck simultaneously at military installations and communications hubs. The Krethak responded with force, but they were not fighting scattered slaves anymore. They were fighting coordinated soldiers, humans who had spent 20 years studying their captors' weaknesses. Every tactic the Krethak used, the humans had a counter for. When the Krethak sent their elite guard, they found corridors rigged with explosives. When they tried to seal off sections, they found humans had already accessed override codes. When they attempted orbital bombardment, their ships discovered they were surrounded by Earth's black vessels. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, the station was in human hands, and overhead, the black ships waited to evacuate every human the Krethak had enslaved. Chen made her move during a council session. Voth was hosting an emergency meeting about the attacks. 20 high-ranking officials gathered in his estate to discuss military response. Chen served them drinks and food as she had for 20 years. No one noticed when she excused herself to retrieve more refreshments. No one heard her lock the doors from the outside. No one realized what was happening until the room filled with gas. Chen watched through a window as the officials collapsed. The gas was designed specifically for their biology, non-lethal but incapacitating. Within minutes, Earth's special forces entered the estate. They had been hiding in the area for weeks, waiting for this exact moment. "Ambassador Chen," the team leader said, saluting, "we are here to take you home." Chen looked at the unconscious council members. "What about them?" "They will stand trial. Earth is collecting everyone responsible for the enslavement decision." "There will be justice, ma'am." "Proper justice," Chen nodded. Then she walked out of Voth's estate, a free woman for the first time in 20 years. Sarah stood in the shipyard control center with 50 other humans. Below them, the alien overseers were contained in their own barracks, locked in by systems the humans had controlled for years without anyone realizing. "Activate the modifications," Sarah ordered. Around the shipyard, every ship the humans had built began to come alive, but not in the way the aliens expected. The modifications Sarah and others had carefully hidden in every vessel activated simultaneously. Engines overloaded. Weapon systems fried. Shield generators exploded. In minutes, the Zin Collective's entire shipyard fleet was reduced to scrap. Years of work destroyed by the very people who had built it. "Earth ships are in position," reported a technician. Through the viewport, Sarah saw them, black and sleek and beautiful. Human ships. Real human ships, not the ones built for their captors. "Evacuate all personnel," Sarah ordered, "and send the data packet." The data packet contained everything. 20 years of stolen technology, military codes, defense plans, biological weaknesses of every species, tactical information that would give Earth an unstoppable advantage. As Sarah boarded the evacuation ship, she looked back at the shipyard one last time. She had built ships here as a slave. Now she was leaving as a soldier in humanity's war. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Humans rising up, alien facilities falling, Earth's fleet appearing. From the darkness, the galaxy had enslaved millions of humans. The Krethak homeworld burned, not with fire exactly. Fire would have been merciful. Instead, Earth had released a nanomachine plague designed specifically for Krethak biology. It did not kill them. It transformed their world. The machines consumed their technology, broke down their buildings, and rendered their advanced civilization into rubble. Within 3 days, the Krethak Empire fell from a galactic superpower to a pre-industrial society. Their fleet was destroyed. Their colonies were isolated. Their people watched helplessly as everything they had built over thousands of years crumbled. Earth broadcast a message to the survivors. "You were the first to propose our enslavement. You will be the first example. This is mercy. You live. Remember what happens when you chain those who should be free." Marcus walked through the ruins of the Krethak capital, leading a team of human soldiers. They were not there to fight. The fighting was over. They were there to evacuate the few Krethak who had spoken against human slavery. The records Earth had collected over 20 years included names. Those who voted against Resolution 7793. Those who protested. Those who died trying to stop it. "Only 17, Marcus said, looking at the list. "Out of a population of 12 billion, only 17 stood with us." 17 more than 0, replied his second in command. They found 14 of them alive. The other 3 had been executed years ago for their opposition. Marcus personally escorted the survivors to Earth ships, where they would be taken to protective custody. They would be witnesses at the trials. They would be proof that not every alien had supported the enslavement, but they would also live with the knowledge that their entire civilization had paid the price for their species' choice. The Zin Collective tried to negotiate. They sent ambassadors to Earth carrying messages of peace and offers of reparations. The ambassadors arrived at Sol System and were granted an audience with Earth's new military council. Admiral Martinez sat across from the Zin delegation in a conference room on Earth's orbital station. Behind her, through massive windows, the Zin could see Earth's fleet. Thousands of ships, more launching every hour. "We wish to discuss terms of peace," said the lead Zin ambassador, its tentacles gesturing in a pattern meant to show submission. "There are no terms," Martinez replied. "Your civilization voted to enslave mine. The penalty for that vote is already decided, but we can offer technology, resources, territory. We do not want your offerings. We want justice." "What justice?" The ambassador asked desperately. What will satisfy Earth? Martinez stood and walked to the window. Do you see those ships? Each one carries weapons we spent 20 years developing. Weapons designed to counter every species in the galaxy. We studied you all while you used us as slaves. We learned your biologies, your weaknesses, your fears, and we turned that knowledge into weapons. She turned back to face the delegation. The Zin Collective has 30 days to evacuate all civilians from your core worlds. After that, those worlds will be rendered uninhabitable. Not destroyed. We are not genocidal. But your civilization will be reduced to scattered colonies. You will spend the next 1,000 years rebuilding from nothing. That is your justice. You cannot. We can. And we will. The only thing you can choose is whether your people survive, evacuate, or die. Those are your options. The Zin delegation left in silence. They had no power to negotiate. Earth was not interested in compromises. Chen stood in the captured council chambers watching as former council members were brought in under guard. They would stand trial for crimes against humanity. The galaxy was watching. Earth had made sure of that. The trials were broadcast across every frequency, translated into every language. Voth was among the accused. He looked at Chen with what might have been recognition or regret. It was hard to tell with his crystalline features. Ambassador Chen, he said as guards led him past. I did not think humans capable of such brutality. Chen met his eyes. We learned from the best. You enslaved us for our potential. Now you face the consequences of that potential fully realized. The trials lasted weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. 20 years of documentation, recorded votes, intercepted communications, testimony from the humans who had been enslaved. The galaxy watched as the truth was laid bare. The decision to enslave humanity had not been made in fear or ignorance. It had been made in cold calculation. Humans were useful. Humans were profitable. And humans were weak enough to be contained, except they were not. The council members were found guilty. The sentence was life imprisonment on a remote world, where they would live out their days knowing their decisions had destroyed their civilizations. Sarah commanded a ship now. Earth had pulled its best engineers from the rescued slaves and given them vessels of their own. Her ship, the Remembrance, led a fleet toward the Avorian systems. The Avorians had been enthusiastic supporters of human slavery, using humans in dangerous mining operations where thousands had died. Target the orbital platforms, Sarah ordered. Minimal civilian casualties, her crew worked efficiently. They were good at this. Too good, perhaps. The weapons they fired were precise and devastating. The Avorian defense fleet tried to respond but found their weapons useless. Earth had reverse-engineered their technology and built specific countermeasures. Every shot the Avorians fired was deflected or absorbed. Platform 1 destroyed. Platform 2 destroyed. Platform 3, hold, Sarah ordered. On the screen, she saw an Avorian civilian transport trying to flee the battle. It was damaged and leaking atmosphere. Inside would be families, children, people who had nothing to do with the decision to enslave humanity. Tactical, can we help them? Their systems are incompatible with ours, Captain. Sarah clenched her fists. She could let them die. They were Avorians, after all. Their government had worked her people to death in mines. But they were also civilians. Send a shuttle with repair supplies. Help them stabilize, then let them go. Her crew hesitated. Captain, our orders. Our orders are to dismantle their military, not murder civilians. Send the shuttle. The shuttle launched. The Avorian transport was saved. As it limped away from the battle, Sarah wondered if she had just made a mistake. Mercy was not something the Avorians had shown humanity, but maybe that was the point. If Earth became like their former masters, what had they really won? The war continued. Species after species fell. Some tried to fight. Their fleets were destroyed. Some tried to hide. Earth's intelligence network, built over 20 years of quiet observation, found them. Some begged for mercy. Earth granted it only to those who could prove they had opposed the enslavement. The Galactic Council shattered. Without military power or political unity, it dissolved. Species retreated to their homeworlds, hoping Earth would overlook them. Some were spared. The avians from Kepler 442b, who had abstained from the vote. The methane breathers from Titan's moon, who had no voting rights but had secretly helped human slaves. The Silicon Collective that had opposed the enslavement and been overruled. These species were contacted by Earth with a different message. You stood with us when others did not. You will be protected. Rebuild your civilizations. Learn from this. We will ensure no one harms you. But for the 623 species that had actively supported or profited from human slavery, there was no mercy. Their military capabilities were destroyed. Their industrial centers were dismantled. Their colonies were scattered. Earth did not exterminate them. That would make humanity no better than those who had enslaved them. But Earth ensured they would never again have the power to enslave another species. Marcus stood on the bridge of an Earth carrier, looking at a tactical map. Red marks showed species that had been neutralized. Green marks showed those who were protected. Yellow marks showed targets still to be addressed. We are running out of enemies, his tactical officer observed. Good, Marcus replied. This was never about conquest. It was about ensuring this never happens again. What happens when we run out of targets? What happens to all these ships and soldiers? Marcus thought about that. Earth had mobilized its entire population for war. Billions of people building ships, training soldiers, developing weapons. What would they do when the war ended? We become guardians, he said finally. The galaxy learned what happens when they abuse the weak. We will make sure they never forget that lesson. Chen received a message from Earth. The trials were nearly complete. The guilty were sentenced. Now came the harder question. What should Earth do next? She stood in the ruined council chambers and recorded her response. We have won the war. We have achieved our revenge. Now we must decide what kind of species we want to be. We can rule through fear, or we can rule through justice. I vote for justice. Harsh justice, yes, but justice nonetheless. Let the galaxy rebuild. Let them remember. But let them also see that humanity can be more than just warriors. We can be the guardians who ensure this never happens to any species again. Her message was debated on Earth for weeks. Some wanted to establish a human empire. Others wanted to isolate Earth and let the galaxy burn. But eventually, Chen's view won. Earth would not become the monster that had been created by those who enslaved them. Sarah stood on the bridge of the remembrance, watching the stars. The war was winding down. Most major threats were neutralized. Now came the Reb. Earth tasted like ash. Marcus stood on the soil of his homeworld for the first time in 20 years. He had left as a sergeant, full of hope that humanity would find its place among the stars. He returned as a general, carrying the weight of a war that had broken the galaxy. Around him, soldiers disembarked from the transport ships. Some knelt and kissed the ground. Others wept openly. A few simply stood frozen, unable to process that they were finally home. It does not feel like I thought it would, said Lieutenant Park, a young woman who had been born in the fighting pits. She had never seen Earth before. This was her homeworld, but it was also alien to her. What did you think it would feel like? Marcus asked. I do not know. Like victory, maybe. Instead, it just feels empty. Marcus understood. They had won. The species who enslaved humanity were defeated. Justice had been served. But the cost had been enormous, not just to the galaxy, but to humanity itself. Earth was different now. The planet that had built its civilization on exploration and hope had become a fortress world. Cities were now military installations. Universities taught weapons development alongside philosophy. Children grew up learning tactics before they learned art. We had to change to survive, President Hassan said when Marcus met with Earth's leadership. But now we must decide if we can change back. The council chamber held representatives from across Earth and its reclaimed colonies. They had gathered to debate humanity's future. The room was tense. Everyone had opinions. Everyone had trauma. We should establish a human empire, argued General Torres. We have the power. We have the ships. The galaxy fears us. We could rule for 1,000 years and become exactly what we hated, Chen replied. She sat at the table looking older than her years. 20 years as a slave, then 3 years of war had left their marks. We fought for freedom, not domination. We fought for survival, Torres shot back. And we won. Now we must ensure humanity is never threatened again. By becoming the threat, Sarah spoke up from her seat. I spent 20 years building ships for slavers, then 3 years destroying civilizations. I am tired of building and destroying. I want to build something that lasts. What would you build? Asked President Hassan. Sarah looked around the table. A guarantee. Not an empire. A system that ensures no species can ever enslave another. Laws with actual enforcement. Peace through strength, but also through justice. The debate raged for days. Some wanted isolation. Earth would seal itself off, let the galaxy sort out its own problems. Others wanted expansion. Humans would spread to every corner of space, securing their future through sheer numbers. Still others wanted revenge continued. 623 species had supported enslavement. All 623 should be wiped out completely. Marcus listened to it all and felt his soul grow heavier. They had won the war but were losing themselves. On the 5th day of debate, a message came from the frontier. One of the defeated species, the Vexians, had attempted to rebuild a military fleet in secret. They were planning revenge against humanity. Earth's patrol ships had discovered the fleet and destroyed it. See? Torres said, pointing at the report. This is why we cannot show weakness. The moment we do, they will come for us again. This is also why we need something more than military might, Chen countered. We need a system, laws, enforcement that is not just Earth acting alone. An idea began to form. Marcus stood and addressed the council. What if we rebuild the Galactic Council? But different this time, with rules that actually matter, and consequences that actually hurt. A council that enslaved us? Someone scoffed. No, a council that we control, with representatives from species who oppose the enslavement. Protected by human military power but governed by law, not by fear. The room fell silent. It was an ambitious idea, maybe an impossible one, but it was better than the alternatives of isolation, empire, or endless war. President Hassan looked thoughtful. It would require us to work with aliens again. Many people will not accept that. Many people want to kill every alien in the galaxy, Marcus replied. This is a compromise. We do not trust them, but we also do not become genocidal monsters. We create a system where trust can eventually grow. The vote was close, but it passed. Chen was chosen to lead the effort. She had been humanity's voice before enslavement and during the war. Now she would be humanity's voice in peace. She stood before the assembled remnants of galactic civilization 3 months later. The meeting took place on a neutral station, not on Earth and not on any alien world. The attendees were carefully selected. Species who had opposed enslavement, representatives from the few surviving members of species who had voted for it, but were now willing to accept new terms. Humanity does not forgive, Chen began. We do not forget. The species who enslaved us have been punished. Many of you here today represent those species. You lost your fleets, your colonies, your power. Some of you lost entire worlds, she paused, letting that sink in. But humanity is also not interested in ruling through terror alone. We want a galaxy where enslavement is impossible, where species respect each other not because they fear human weapons, but because there are laws and consequences. A Xin representative, one of the few survivors of their leadership, spoke up. Why should we trust humanity? You proved yourselves capable of destruction beyond anything we imagined. You should not trust us, Chen replied bluntly. Trust must be earned. But you should fear us enough to follow the new rules. And you should hope that over time, fear can become respect. The new Galactic Accord was written over 6 months. It had teeth. Real consequences. Enslavement of any sentient species was punishable by immediate military intervention. Abuse of workers required economic sanctions and oversight. Violations meant Earth's fleet would come calling, but the Accord also had protections. Species could govern themselves as they wished. They could trade freely. They could develop technology. As long as they followed the core rules about sentient rights, Earth would leave them alone. Will this work? Sarah asked Chen one night as they reviewed the final draft. I do not know, Chen admitted. But it is better than the alternatives, Sarah nodded. She had been offered a position as Admiral of Earth's patrol fleet. She would command the ships that enforced the Accord. It was not the life she had imagined as a young engineer, but it was the life the galaxy needed. Marcus stood on a stage on Earth addressing a crowd of soldiers. Many were being discharged. The war was over. Earth needed fewer warriors and more builders. You fought for humanity's freedom, he told them. You won. Now the harder fight begins, the fight to build a peace worth keeping. Some of you will stay in the military. Some will return to civilian life. All of you will carry what you have seen and done. That burden does not disappear, but it can be used to make sure no one else has to carry it. After the speech, Lieutenant Park approached him. General, what will you do? Marcus had thought about that. He was offered positions in the military, in government, anywhere he wanted. But he kept thinking about the gladiator fights, about the humans forced to kill each other for alien entertainment. "I'm going to work with the survivors," he said. "The ones who were slaves longest. The ones born into captivity. They need help adjusting to freedom. I think I can provide that." Park nodded. "Because you understand." "Because I understand." Across the galaxy, the rebuilding began. It was slow and painful. Species that had been destroyed had to be helped to survive. Even though they had supported slavery, Earth provided aid not out of kindness but out of practicality. Dead species could not learn lessons. Living species could change. Some species embraced the new order. They followed the accord and rebuilt their societies with new respect for sentient rights. Others resisted quietly, testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses. Earth's patrols were always watching. The children born during the war, like Lieutenant Park, struggled most with the peace. They had been raised for battle. They had been told their enemies deserved destruction. Now they were told to protect those same enemies. Chen established counseling programs, education initiatives, exchange programs where young humans could meet aliens in peaceful circumstances. It was not popular. Many families refused to let their children near any alien species. But slowly, very slowly, attitudes began to shift. 20 years after the war ended, a Krethak delegation requested permission to send students to Earth's universities. The request sparked fierce debate. The Krethak had proposed human enslavement. Their civilization had been destroyed as punishment. Now they wanted to learn from humanity. The vote to accept them was narrow, but it passed. On the day the Krethak students arrived, protesters lined the streets. Marcus stood between the students and the angry crowd along with other veterans. "These are children," he called out. "They were not born when the vote happened. They did not enslave anyone. Their species did." Someone shouted back, "Yes," Marcus agreed. "And their species paid the price. These children grew up in ruins because of what their ancestors did. They know the cost. Now let them learn so they do not repeat the mistakes." The crowd did not disperse, but they did not attack. The students made it to the university safely. One of them, a young Krethak named Vex, approached Marcus afterward. "Thank you for protecting us. I know my people hurt yours. I am sorry."